Cities are defined by their cultures. Those cultures could entail sports or business or certainly arts and entertainment. Oklahoma City is thriving in all of these areas, but who makes that all happen? This Town OKC explores the people behind the cultures, their origins, their motivations, their challenges, and their dreams. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. I've been in this town for over 50 years with a front row seat to seeing the culture grow from a dusty bus stop on the Southern Plains to a flourishing destination. Join me as we meet the folks behind the culture on This Town OKC. Jim Beaver, it is an extreme pleasure for me to have you today sitting around my kitchen table. We're not in the rehearsal studio at Carpenter Square Theater because of extenuating circumstances. We have to record this podcast when we can. And I must say, you don't really meet the criteria for this podcast because I'm collecting oral histories of the people behind the culture of Oklahoma City, and you've been gone for basically 50 years.
You're
Welcome.
Right. Thank you. I am glad to be back half a century later. You're going to bring that up, are you?
Well, I have to establish our connection. You and I were in school together at CSU back in the day, back in the early mid 70s.
Right.
I think we established earlier. You graduated 75. I graduated 76. You were in theater. I was broadcasting. But we both gun fought at Frontier City together.
Well, that's probably the greatest accomplishment of my life, and was certainly one of the 2 or 3 favorite jobs I ever had in my life. So, yeah, it was a long time ago. I hear it's changed somewhat over there.
Yeah. Whereas we got to make up shows every time they're doing a scripted show in a particular spot. But the real reason I'm interviewing you here is because A, you're in town, and B, because you're acting in a movie that I have a small hand in making happen. Written and directed by Ann Lauer, another Oklahoma City native who's been in L.A., such as yourself, for a long time, and she's back here shooting this movie, and you're the male lead in the thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that happened, but
this is not your first acting gig here doing this little short film. You've been in Hollywood, we'll call it, for a long time, and you've been in a lot of TV shows and some movies.
yeah, I haven't run out of people I've never worked for before, so people seem to keep hiring me, and I'm fine with that. I love the work, and I've been really fortunate to get to do some stuff that I was really proud of, and not just make a living, but make a living doing something that makes me feel like I'm not wasting my life, and that people seem to like. So
I seem to recall, I know that you're kind of from the Fort Worth area, and that you went back to the Metroplex after college, I believe, and was there for a few years to earn your equity card. Do I have that correct?
no, not exactly. I grew up in the Metroplex. I grew up in Irving. I had lived briefly in Fort Worth and briefly in Dallas, but mainly in Irving, right in the middle between them. And after college, I went back there for 3 or 4 years and did local theater there before moving to New York. But it wasn't until I went to Los Angeles in 1983 that I actually got my equity card and started. Well, I'd been doing film and television a little bit by then, but I'd done a lot of plays, and then eventually people started giving me a line or two here or there in a movie and or on a TV series, and they hadn't caught on yet.
how long, what years were you in New York?
I was in New York from 1979 to 1982,
Okay.
3 years. And I did a lot of theater while I was there, but I didn't do a lot of theater there. I got hired for a lot of stuff,
Okay.
all out of town, on the road. I did stock in New Hampshire and West Virginia and Ohio, and then I had a couple of gigs at the old Gaslight Dinner Theater here in Oklahoma City.
I remember that place at 122nd in May,
Yeah,
North Park Mall. There's a
yeah.
liquor store there now.
Well, good thing there wasn't a liquor store when I was there. So yeah, I came back a couple of times to do plays here in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
What plays did you do on the road? Do you recall?
Well, I did The Lark, which was about Joan of Arc. I did Shakespeare's Scottish play,
Yes.
and a Texas play called The Last Meeting of the Knights of the White Magnolia,
Oh, I love that play.
and then here in beautiful Oklahoma City, I did Boeing, and the undying masterpiece Natalie Needs a Nightie. So, uh, yeah, I wasn't very good, but I got a lot of free food because dinner theater has its advantages.
So you went to LA in 82. What was
83,
83?
February of 83, I packed up almost everything I owned on the back of my motorcycle and took off for LA. And I was just going out there for a short trip to do some research for a book I was writing, and 42 years later, I'm still there.
This is the one on George Reeves,
Yeah,
TV's Superman.
still working on the book.
You think you were working on that one? We were in college together.
I, it's I don't like to rush things.
So have you gotten to chapter 2 yet?
I'm about to. No. Actually, I'm about 22 chapters into it, and it's about as long as Moby Dick. I hope it's a little more fun to read, but still plowing around trying to get through it. It's I discovered that it's difficult to spend much time writing when idiots keep hiring you to go act somewhere.
Sure.
So I'm on the road so much, it has really dragged out this particular project.
What was your first camera gig in LA?
In L.A., I had done a couple of 2 or 3 little things in Dallas, and in New York, but
Well, what were those? And then we'll
yeah.
get back to LA.
Well, I did an episode of Dallas in Dallas. Actually, I did two. I did 2 of those back in. I I've seen the episodes and I haven't seen me. So and then I did an awful little movie called The Seniors, which was about a bunch of college kids who start a brothel, and and I was essentially an extra in that. But 35 years later, the DVD came out, and it said The Seniors, starring Dennis Quaid and Jim Beaver. I don't even have a line in it, but it apparently was. Dennis and I were the only 2 people in it anybody still heard of. So,
You did a movie while you were in Dallas with Burt Reynolds. And let me remind me if I have this story correct or incorrect. You were an extra in a classroom scene, and they had blocked it on the afternoon of one day, and you knew where you were going to be the next morning when it came time to shoot. And you wore an orange shirt so you could find yourself in the shot. Is that true?
That's pretty close. It wasn't a classroom. It was kind of a sort of motivational speaker seminar.
Right, right.
And
Where he's wearing the motorman's friend.
yeah, yeah. And I just, I wasn't trying to show off or anything. I just, it was a huge crowd. And I thought, when this movie comes out, I want to be able to find me because otherwise I'm just going to be one of the, faceless bodies. And so I wore an awful mustard colored shirt and I'm pretty easy to spot. Well, what's weird is that they moved us around at times, and so I'm easy to spot in more than one place. So, but then I thank God I don't look like that anymore, because I've shown that scene to people and they go, "That's not you," and I'm grateful for that.
Okay, let's get back out to L.A. What was your first camera gig out there?
I think the very first thing I did was an episode of The Young and the Restless. I I knew somebody who knew somebody, and uh, they it's not that hard to get a small part on a soap opera, especially if you've got a contact. And so a friend of mine who was on the show recommended me to the casting director, and they just brought me in, and I had one scene as a cop, and uh, the, I did my one scene in one take, and everybody clapped, and I was very proud of myself. And then I saw it when it was on the air, and I realized one of the first lessons I ever learned about acting for the camera, and that is don't raise your eyebrows up over the top of your head. Because I played that entire scene looking like I was trying to scratch my back with my eyebrows, and it was a valuable lesson. And and now I squint for a living.
What was your big break, if you can say that you had one?
Yeah, I can definitely say I had one. It was kind of twofold. I had I had written a play that was loosely based on things that happened to me when I was living in Edmond, going to Central, and the play was produced in Los Angeles very successfully, and I ended up getting a big agent out of it, and they got me a lot of work writing television. And so I was writing a fair number of different shows. It was a very fortuitous time for me because I was a Vietnam veteran, and it was right at the time when television and film was starting to explore that war. And there were a lot of companies looking for Vietnam vets who could write. And so I got a lot of jobs doing that sort of thing.
What shows do you recall?
There was an HBO series called Vietnam War Story. There was a CBS series on the war called Tour of Duty. And then I wrote 3 or 4 episodes of the revival of Alfred Hitchcock Presents.
Oh yeah.
And a variety of other things. But uh, the, um, the short version is that one day my literary agent introduced me to a theatrical actors agent in the same agency, and she recommended me for a part in a movie that Norman Jewison was directing called In Country, which was about the war, and um, it starred Bruce Willis and Joan Allen and Emily Lloyd, and I went in to meet Norman Jewison, and when he discovered that I was an actual Vietnam vet and this movie was about Vietnam veterans, I guess he saw something he liked, and he put me in it in a substantial main title role, and as one of Bruce Willis's best friends, and that really turned the page for me. I started working a lot, and never wrote a word again for television. But so it was a nice transition because acting was what I wanted to do in the first place.
So on In Country, did you get the opening title credit and introducing Jim Beaver?
Not quite.
Oh, shit.
Not quite.
Oh, that's too bad.
I didn't get that, but I remember we were shooting on location in Paducah, Kentucky, and we had a big press conference with the local Kentucky press the day before we started shooting, and Norman Jewison was speaking to the press, and this is the guy. He had just come off not Moonlighting, Cher and Nicolas Cage.
Moonstruck.
Moonstruck, and he had done in the Heat of the Night and Rollerball and Soldier's Story and he was somebody. He was somebody, and he's talking to the press about this project that we're going to do that is about the lives of Kentucky Vietnam veterans. And he says, we've got a wonderful cast here. We've got Jim Beaver and Bruce Willis. And I'm going, he started with me? They don't know who I am. Well, I have since decided that if I ever write my memoir, it's going to be called How Do They Know Who I Am? Because that's kind of been the story of my life. People sometimes treat me like they know who I am, and I don't get it.
Some of the TV shows that I'm familiar with that you've done, that I've seen, certainly Justified, great role you had on Justified. I seem to recall I was being surprised to see you in a Monk. Am I correct? Yeah, you did.
I did an episode of Monk. I spent a certain amount of time locked in a closet with Jane Lynch.
Oh, damn. Tough gig.
Yeah. And that was, when you're a character actor, you jump around to a lot of TV shows and a lot of movies, and they may not be about you, about your character, but somebody's got to stand there.
You're in the B plot.
Yeah, and but I had I've done a few hundred guest shots like that, and then every once in a while I luck into a regular role on a wonderful show. I've been lucky. The ones I've been on have all been terrific things that I was proud to be part of.
Well, I want to get back to Justified in a moment, but the most recent one I recall is Be Positive.
Yeah.
That was such a cute show. I hated to see that one go off.
I did too. It was, I joined it in the second season. They kind of revamped the storyline the second season. And once again, it was one of those things. They brought in a whole bunch of new actors to the show for season 2. And I was the only one I'd never heard of. They brought in Jane Seymour and Ben Vereen and Hector Elizondo.
Yes.
And I'm going, what am I doing here? And
and Jane Seymour was your love interest.
Yeah. I was having lunch not long ago with Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's son, and Bruce Boxleitner, all of whom had big careers of their own back as far as the 60s and 70s. And we were talking at lunch, and I said, I just realized all three of us have made out with Jane Seymour. And we thought that was pretty funny. And then I thought, yeah, but they did it in their 20s. So it was, it was fun. And I loved working with those people. And but I always loved working with almost everybody. I can count the ones I haven't liked on two fingers, and they'll go nameless, but that's only because I'm being really kind.
So let's get back to Justified. That was a real surprise to me when you showed up on that show. I wasn't expecting. They didn't announce that you were doing a certain number of episode.
Yeah, it was an interesting situation. I had been doing a regular role on Supernatural for several years, and spoiler alert, they killed me off on Supernatural.
Oh no!
Not that it matters. I've been killed about 4 times on that show, but
but because it's supernatural,
you
get to come back.
Yeah, if you're going to die on a show, do it on Supernatural. But because they had at least temporarily dispensed with my services, I was free to take this offer to do Justified, and it was, it was an enjoyable part. The first year or two that I was doing it, didn't seem a terribly important part of the show. It was just one of the many characters, and then season 4 came around, and they decided to do something really special with the character, and I'm not going to spoil that, but it was. Let's just say it's the closest I've ever come to having my sixth sense moment, where a certain amount of people in the audience gasp when they find out a certain bit of information. So that was a lot of fun, and I didn't expect that.
Remind me again what your character's name was.
Shelby Parlow.
Yeah,
he started out as
sheriff, right?
He started out as a worker at a coal mine, but by the end of my second season, the third season of the show, I was the local sheriff, and then things took another interesting turn.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
well worth checking out.
Makes me want to go back and rewatch the show because it was so good. On my Facebook page, I just remembered that under likes and stuff, that is one of the only TV shows that I have listed as one of the things I like on a TV show.
So you're the guy I'm getting residuals from.
I guess I am. I am. And now my lovely wife has a question. Gwen, what do you have to say?
Well, Jim said there were a few things that he's done that he thought have really been worthwhile. Few projects or shows, and I'm interested in knowing what they are.
So the projects you said were worthwhile. What were those?
Well, I've been a bunch of them. I mean, the first one for me was In Country. It was, I thought it was a deeply moving movie. I think it's got Bruce Willis's best performance by far in it, and I was pretty good. It was a very touching story. I think that certainly the thing that I'm probably proudest of being associated with was the HBO show Deadwood.
Yes. You were the nice guy.
Well, I'll argue that there were a couple other guys that were pretty nice here and there, but my character Ellsworth was at one point the creator David Milch said that he thought Ellsworth was probably the conscience of the town.
I was just going to say that myself.
Yeah, and I've been on a lot of great shows, but nothing has ever pleased me as much as Deadwood, and nothing I've done has ever been such a vital part of the argument over what are the best shows in television history. I've seen lots of discussions with critics over the best shows ever made, and there's always The Sopranos, and there's I Love Lucy, and there's The Wire, and there's I don't know that Deadwood was the best show ever made, but it's part of the argument.
Yeah,
And
that's got to be something.
I am so proud of that. It was the smartest, best writing I have ever acted this side of Shakespeare, and my character and the people I got to work with, the level of skill that they brought to it, all of it was just unimaginable to me. I have never felt so lucky in my life as when I got to be on that show.
I have to say, having never subscribed to HBO, the only episodes I've seen have been on hotel room TVs, and I would always search for it.
Well, you communist.
Well, I've given the cable company enough money over the years. I just giving them that little bit more. It was just a hard.
I'll see if I can dig up a DVD for you.
Would you please? That'd be so kind.
Do they still use DVDs?
I still have a player. I do still have a player.
Well, I don't think you'll regret seeing it.
I know.
It's the smartest, most affecting thing I've ever been involved with, and I've often said that when I die, if they just want to put Jim Beaver, he was on Deadwood, I'll be fine with that.
Right. I've been surprised that I haven't seen you in any of the Taylor Sheridan Western TV shows.
I've been surprised as well. I can't count the number of people who've said, "Oh, you should be on Yellowstone. You should be on this or that," and I'm like, "Yeah, could somebody mention it to Taylor?" Good. I've had people on the shows say, "Boy, you should be on this," and it's one thing that has been extraordinarily lucky in my life, just from my own perspective, is that I've gotten to do a lot of Westerns. And I love Westerns. And, well, it goes back even beyond our gunfighting days at Frontier City. I love Westerns. There's something about this potato face of mine that seems to fit the genre. I've done way more of them than anybody my age should have been allowed to do. So whenever one comes up, I hear from a lot of people, "Oh, why aren't you on that?" And I'm usually asking my agents the same question. So
and what do they say?
They shrug. But then again, I also look back and I go, well, I've done more than my share. I'd like to do more, but I can't complain. I mean, there's nothing like dressing up cowboy and getting on a horse and pretending you're tough.
I created in the late 70s my own home video Western TV movie series. Mm-hmm. I called High Noon Matinee. Mm-hmm. simply because my girlfriend at the time, who had also been a broadcasting student, had made an old black and white art card that she drew a cactus and wrote the words High Noon Matinee on for her TV production. So I had the art card. So I made this thing, High Noon Matinee, and I would get a copy of a Western movie and shoot my own intro. Dress up in garb and shoot my own intro. I got a copy of The Shootist. And I now remember calling you to get some details on Don Siegel, the director. And you gave me the info that I then said in my make-believe TV show intro.
And I never got your check.
I never wrote that check.
Okay. The mystery is solved.
Because you were the encyclopedia on all things Westerns.
Well, I was the very fact that I'm an actor is due to the fact that I started out wanting to be a film historian from my teenage years. I was so deep into movies, old movies. They weren't that old then, but I read everything I could find about the making of them and the people who were in them and the people who directed them, and I just soaked up that stuff like a sponge. And when I got out of the Marines in '71, I wanted to study film history, but I was going to school in Oklahoma, and in those days, film history, that was something they taught in Hollywood or New York, and there weren't any classes, so I took theater classes because I thought it was kind of close, and that's when I got hooked on acting. So, but I've kept up the film history stuff. There's no money in it, but I've written a couple of books on the topic, and
Well, I think you've written the definitive history on John Garfield.
I don't know if it was definitive, but I certainly wrote it.
Probably the only one.
Yeah, and I may be the only student at Central who ever wrote a book instead of his term papers, because I wrote that Garfield book while I was still in school. But it didn't come out for a few years after that. But, you know, that's been a second career for me. It hasn't, as I say, hasn't made me any money, but it's my other love. And so, and I'm particularly fond of Westerns. So, you know, when you called up, I mean, The Shootist is one of my favorite movies
And
ever.
it is my favorite John Wayne movie.
It's you know, it's a grand piece of work, and when people call me and say, "Hey, can you tell me something about the director of this or who was in this?" and I just light up. It tickles my dopamine center. So you don't really need to send me a check.
Okay, thanks. Because I think maybe 3 or 4 people have seen seen me, because I had to put the VHS tape myself into the machine to hit play for anyone to see it. So it's not like it,
Yeah.
went anywhere.
Yeah. So there's not much money in that either.
No, no. But gosh, dog, it was fun.
Yeah.
You had a question from the people. Yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned that you had higher billing than Bruce Willis, which brought to mind this question. Of the people you've done work with, do you stay friends with those people? Who of your famous friends are friends?
Well, there's something I dislike about the acting business, and that is that you do the work, you work with a group of other actors, not to mention crew and directors, And very often there's a bond that forms. And sometimes it can be really intense friendships, once in a blue moon, an intense romantic relationship. But you really do form bonds if you're on a happy show.
And the same with the play as well.
Yes, yeah, very much so. There's such a communal feeling, but you make one-on-one relationships. It's not that I don't like that. It's that most of the time when the show's over, everyone goes their own way, and you may never see them again. You may never talk to them again unless you end up on another show together. I've been around long enough that some of the people I've met on shows I've worked with numerous times on different programs, but and I'm a very sentimental sort, and I make attachments really quickly and really deeply sometimes, and so there have been people that I have worked with that I just adored, and yet when it was over, it was over, and not any sense at all of hard feelings or just we all go our separate ways. So when there is somebody that I've stayed connected with, I really treasure that. And you have to define connected because, for example, I did a TV series with Mark Harmon back in the early 90s. And Mark and I are still friends, but we see each other every 20 years or so. Every once in a while there's a birthday email or something, but that's about it. But I still feel like, well, Mark knows who I am and he likes me and I like him. And that's great. Would I love to hang out with him more? Yeah. Would he love to hang out with me more? I don't know. But
What was the series?
it was a series called Reasonable Doubts. And it was a cop and lawyer show, and I was his partner, a homicide cop. And there are, you mentioned be positive. I struck up what felt like really good friendships with Linda Lavin and Ben Vereen and Hector Elizondo, and we just lost Linda Lavin in December, and not only did I hate losing her, I hated the fact that this was a new friendship and that we had really built a strong connection. And then suddenly, a year and a half, 2 years after the show, she was gone. But I still stay in touch with Ben Vereen and Hector, and I hit it off really strongly with Tom Hiddleston when I did Crimson Peak. But then again, that's a few years, and I haven't seen Tom in a very long time. It's not. Some of it's because some of these people I'm talking about are so big that the demands on them are so astronomical that there's no time to perpetuate a short-term friendship into something longer. But it doesn't mean I didn't really love the person or being with him. Most of the people I know from work that I'm constantly in touch with are other character actors like myself, Stephen Tobolowsky and W. Earl Brown, Garrett Dillahunt, guys that I see over and over on different jobs or different auditions, and guys who are generally very much on the same playing field I'm on. We're not talking Brad Pitt and George Clooney here. We're talking guys who, do the grunt work and do it fairly regularly. And we've usually got more in common, but we've also usually got more time.
Right.
So, But there are a lot of people that I worked with over the years that I still hold really dear, but I may only see them, once every decade. And but when I do, it's usually, mutually warm and still enjoyable, still a feeling of connection.
You mentioned Mark Harmon. I had my moment with Mark Harmon on a Southwest flight. He was already on board. Southwest, so it's all coach.
Right.
I'm boarding, probably in Phoenix, and flying back to Oklahoma City. And as I'm boarding, he looks up. Our eyes meet. I give him the old masculine, chin up, recognition.
Mm-hmm.
I know who you are. And he returned it.
Mm-hmm.
That was our moment. Not that he recognized me, but he acknowledged that
Yeah. Yeah.
I recognized him and I was going to leave him alone.
Well, I will say this. I have, as I mentioned before, it's an extremely limited number of actors I've worked with that I've found unpleasant. But the number of actors I've worked with who I found wonderfully pleasant is fortunately a long list, and Mark Harmon's at the top of it. He and Hiddleston, the all of the guys on Deadwood, the late David Warner. These are people that you know that if something was a problem, they'd be there for you, and they're kind and they're gracious to the new kids on the show and the bit players, and there's no sense of this I'm a bigger star and therefore you don't count as much as I do. There's none of that.
Which I've encountered in the theater.
Yeah.
I did a play with, the actor was from Dallas. It was The Grapes of Wrath, and I was just in the ensemble.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't even Mark Harmon me.
Well, that's probably why
he's still in Dallas.
He's still in Dallas. I may know who he was.
He's pretty young. Probably not.
I have, there's a lot of talk about actors being rich, selfish, egotistic, decadent. I've found to almost the complete exclusion of anything else that the actors I've worked with over it's now 53 years since my first professional gig, are some of the most human, decent, giving, and gracious people I've ever encountered. There's bad apples, but it's like in so many other fields, the bad apples get a lot of press.
Auditions. You mentioned auditions. Do you still have to audition?
Yeah.
Really?
Not often, but and I turn down a lot more than I do, because not that I'm anywhere near star level, but even somebody of my middling name value gets called on a lot because they're desperate to find somebody's heard of to be in their show or to be in their movie. So I get I get offers. I get offers to audition for things that I've finally gotten old enough and solidified enough that I don't have to do everything that comes along. But when I do audition, it's usually because it's something I really want to do, and it's the only way I'm going to get a chance to do it. Most of the time, and of course, particularly since COVID, the whole audition process has changed. You used to go into the studio and you would meet the director and the producer and the writers maybe, and read for them and talk about it and discuss it. And most of that is out the window now. It's all done. You do it at home with your phone and you record it and you send it in, and there's no interaction. And because that not only limits what is presented to them, but it also opens up the field for how many people can get in. Where, 20 years ago, I would go in to audition for something and I would be one of 5 or 6 guys up for the part. Well, now with what they call self-tapes, I may be one of 1,000 guys up for the part. And even my track record can't hold up quite the same way in that regard. So I'm not crazy about the current situation, but I every once in a while something comes along. The last thing I auditioned for was the Broadway production of Othello that Denzel Washington and Jake Gyllenhaal were doing. I didn't get it, but I came close, and that was something that I absolutely felt, yeah, I'll audition because that's the only way I'm going to get a chance at it, and it's something that I would kill to do. But if somebody calls up and says we're rebooting Charlie's Angels, and we'd like you to play a plumber, I'm not auditioning for that.
What about a sheriff?
A sheriff, maybe. Fortunately, there are enough people I've worked for that I haven't infuriated or disappointed, that most of my work now comes from either people I've worked with before or people who were fans of some show I was on or some movie. And most of the stuff I get now is just somebody calling up and saying, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I say yes or I say no. It's pretty terrific. It's how I ended up in this thing we're doing.
Yeah.
You just called up and said you want to do it. And
I read the script and Anne asked me if I knew anyone, and I said, yes, I do. I know just the right guy. I know timing had something to do with your decision to do this project with Ann Lauer called Chimera. But what was the real motivation for doing it?
The motivation was a combination of things. One, it was you, whom I've known for 50 years.
Thank you.
And I was flattered by your trust and confidence in me, and it was a powerful script. I read it and I thought, this thing has something lovely to say, and it also provides me with a wide range of actor things to do. Some real turns that are maybe a little different than some of the other things I've done. I'm always looking for something that's exciting and different. I like playing sheriffs. I've played about 40 of them.
Yeah.
I like playing detectives. I've played about 40 of those. But I really like it when somebody says, "Hey, this is kind of off the beaten track, but I think you'd fit it. And those two things were the prime movers in my deciding to do this. If it had not been you, whom I trust and vaguely like, I might not have given much thought to it. And then the fact that I was going to be in Oklahoma City around the general time you wanted to shoot, that was just gravy.
That was the timing part. You were in town for a supernatural convention,
Right,
of sorts.
Yeah,
and you had the time available, and it fit Ann's time frame.
Yeah, it was a terrific coincidence that it all worked out, because I've got another job starting next week, and I had another job last week, and here we've got a week to shoot this thing, and it fit in perfectly, and I could save you guys a couple of bucks because somebody else was paying for me to be in Oklahoma City.
And that, you have no idea how much that helped. You probably do. I can't tell you how grateful I am that you first said yes to being in this movie. It certainly raised my credibility to to be able to tell Ann, I got a guy who's on Deadwood. And so thank you for doing that.
Well, I'm sure it's been quite a letdown.
Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. Oh, my goodness. And of course, we're not going to give away anything about the movie itself other than it's a drama. I'll just say it's a drama.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for making this movie with me. Thank you very much for sitting down for this stupid interview.
No, this is
at my kitchen table. Normally we're in the rehearsal studio at Carpenter Square Theater where we did the table read. I have a rack of electronics and studio quality stuff. I'm afraid this is going to sound like the quality of podcasts that I rail against. But I'll do what I can to clean it up.
Well, everybody's got an off day.
Yeah.
And thank you. For 30 years, he would point at the TV and go, I know him. I gunfought with him. I know. Sure.
Finally, you have to believe him.
She did not believe me.
Well, I got a question for you, and that is, did you see any of this coming with me 50 years ago?
Oh, hell no. No. I mean, no
Me
more,
either.
no more so than you saw anything. I mean, we were goofballs.
Yeah.
Just goofballs. And certainly gunfighting goofballs. I mean, that was living for pure fun. I want to have fun today. I'm going to go play gun and
get $10 a week to do it.
Yeah. And you know, if you didn't feel like loading shells, you just say, "Well, kill me first."
Yeah.
And I'll die early. I just want to play. Yeah. And here's one of the things our mutual friend Jim Edmond, lovingly known as Pinky, that we both had long relationships with. May he rest in peace. I remember one of the things that he used to do just to drive other people mad, when he was playing a bad guy and they would shoot at him, he would twist his body out of the way and go, "Wow, that was close." Or he'd brush his ear and go, "Wow, you almost got me there."
Oh, man.
Anyway, going to wrap it up on that happy note. This Town OKC is edited by Fred O. Bishop. It's sponsored by Carpenter Square Theater, and it is a Lippert Media production. Thank you, Jim.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Studio, right?